your artistic name is Calibri, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
See, I have it written down.
Thank you.
I can't believe it's the first time I've met you. Like, because, it's not like I'm in it, but, like, I work with kids and I work with the same kind of issues in the
I
communities
think
and stuff.
we might be on. I'm
You
not
are.
sure. Hello. We're so happy to see you today. Welcome to Mediterranean Fire. I'm your host, Biba Sheikh, with Sunanda Samador Corrado, Dr. Sunanda. And we have with us today the honor of speaking with a wonderful artist who's extremely important in the current history of Detroit. Her name is Calibri, and you've probably seen her works because they are around the city. They are huge hanging pieces of healing energy through images. She also works with people who need healing and who need to rise up in many different ways and forms, with the youth in the city, with older people. And she's going to talk to us today about the bridge between healing and art, I think, which is her specialty, if you could say specialty. And welcome, and thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And I just want to put in another 2 cents. Ms. Harris also has her own art show with the WJZZ family. Will you tell us when you're on, please, so we can listen in?
Well, we're on Wednesday nights at 8. Get down and dirty talking art with myself and a fellow artist, Debbie LaPratt. We also have an art summit coming up, so
What's
I
your
believe you're
art
on the
summit?
That's right.
panel for that. Yeah.
Yes.
It was moved to July 24th. It's going to be at Annex Gallery, but that's another opportunity to talk about why art is important to the community. So that's what the panel is about. So
Why is art important to the community?
well, I'm actually glad you asked that because it's even with the panel, what we've gotten across the board is healing. Even without us realizing it, whether because people don't know what art is, right? A lot of time, the average person, you tell them they're an artist or art, they feel like it needs to be a gallery set up or
Like a skill.
yeah, or they have to be professional, and they don't realize that, number one, it helps us focus when you are painting. It helps us to kind of tune in to what's going on with us. And when you're not, even just watching it, like we would watch Bob Ross, and why we get sucked in and calmed down. It helps to balance our energies, And in a community setting, it cultures a community. A lot of times we get bogged down with TV and bombarded with different images, kind of empty images, and art is a way to get a message. It's beautiful. It's subliminal messaging. It's beautiful imagery. It helps with people's outlook on themselves, depending on the type of pictures you're looking at. It's beautification. It's just helps us feel good.
And Sunanda, what did art do for you as a dancer growing up, Indian dancer?
Well, it gave me tremendous empowerment because what a woman coming from whatever culture, we're always taught to subdue what we feel, what we think, what we perceive. So especially through Indian classical dance, because we interpret a lot of scriptures, that gave us a lot of empowerment. That gave us a lot of empowerment in terms of how we could be in our agency. So we were representing because we're in America too, we ended up being ambassadors of our culture through our women's bodies.
I love that.
Yeah, but then the other part is like what happens with art when it becomes commodified, what you were talking about. So like none of the boys want to join our Indian classical dances because they think it's feminized. Wearing silks and wearing gold is something that they're not used to. So I'm wondering, like, when art is so much about being empathetic and getting in touch, how is it working with these kids in Detroit where like every other access to doing that has been closed down? And I just want to admire you for what you've been doing because our kids are amazing.
Yes.
And you're giving them a way to shoot out into this world.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. And even for doing what you're doing, because that's part of it. So my organization is called Danahan Arts, ARTS, Alternative Release Therapies, and I'm not limited to visual arts.
Okay.
It's just the arts as a form of expression and release. So it can be visual arts, it can be dance, music, the art of massage, the art of cooking, you know, just all of these other things that we use with the other side of the mind, where we kind of gotten to a point where we feel like, well, math and science, that's important, but we discard the other side,
right
of the
side
brain.
Of the brain. Yes.
And they really do need to function simultaneously in order for us to be healthy and have our full potential, I guess. And I guess my organization wants to focus on that part, how to work that out. Sorry.
And what are the highlights or the high moments of this process, and what kind of results has it had with certain people?
Well,
maybe there isn't a result. It's always an ongoing process.
It's always an ongoing process, but originally I started with myself, seeing where it worked with me. You know, kind of having trauma as a child and going through adulthood, and seeing where art was my outlet, and then getting into arts. And at first it was just making money. You know, people wanted to be entertained of some sort, and I liked how they received it. And then what I started paying attention to was just on their own. Without me trying, people would say how it helped them, or they might have breakdowns and cry. And it would be a regular thing, like we're having a paint party and somebody just starts breaking down and having this release. I'm like, what the heck, you know? But I guess the turning point, I had a youth class, and there wasn't anything. I wanted the kids to have something to do, and I was just teaching a summer art class, and there were children that didn't think that they could, and it's kind of like once you introduce something to them, they're kind of tied to creativity forever, or it brings out something else, you know, creative that they didn't think that they could do. And I saw that happening, and then after that I had a friend reach out. Juilliard had a summer program, and they were trying to test it out. At Detroit, or they just had a summer program, and they didn't have anyone to facilitate it. So she kind of put me up, or introduced me to the people for that, and then I wound up teaching the course for Juilliard, and regular Detroit students. But now they get to say that they trained at Juilliard, and they really did get a full portfolio, a full body of work, and they just it showed them something different, because these are kids otherwise they just can't even play at the park because the adults are at the park, and at that time we didn't have the parks open. So a lot of times kids get into crime, they get into kind of other stuff, or they get dumbed down. It
was more ridiculous than that. The kids couldn't go back to their old schools to play in the summer either. It was considered trespassing. A couple of my students got arrested for playing basketball in their old high school.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so people outside the city have no idea how much kids inside the city have to actually go through. And in that sense, all this untapped potential for expression. Right?
And they have a lot to say. They have a lot. You have incredible dancers. And like you said, even with the classical dance, you might have boys that feel like, just based on what they've seen, well, that's not for me. And a lot of times, just with any arts, well, that's not for me. I'm not that. But they've never experienced it directly. So when they're in this setting and they get to feel what it does, and they get to see, well, I really like to cook, or I really like to sing, or especially when you don't have other people doing it, you don't have other people encouraging it. It's no other place for them to get it.
What I love is the way you propose therapy is about cultivating abilities. It's not always about all this internal work. Look at yourself and say, I love you 10 times in the morning. That doesn't change the world.
No.
But when you put something out there, it changes the world. And having an ability to put it out there changes who you are. And that's how I really felt about dance. And so when I look at this painting behind you, it's amazing. Because you've got all this color. And then you've got the figure in shades of black and white and gray. And it's exquisite. And so, do you mind telling us a little bit about this gorgeous piece?
Not at all.
Such an honor to have it here.
Thank you. Well, this was, I kind of had a dream. I did have a dream. about an angel. So she's an angel. And the interpretation was me. I had a dream, and it was about me, but it didn't look like me. So this is kind of what came from it. But she was trapped in a world, and where it was dark, and she was colorful, and her colors were starting to fade. So when I got up, I painted it, and I still wanted to use different shades of golds and colors to show how vibrant she was, and I wanted bold colors for it to stand out. But for me, the black became not just about the colors fading, but more so encompassing all the colors. So she is black, but also she's representative of everything, because every black is included in everything, even white, goes into black. So I just think I wanted to depict that, and everyone that sees it has their own reactions to it. So this is kind of the face of Danahan Arts, or the logo for Danahan Arts.
That's beautiful. When did you paint it?
I painted this in 2018, I believe. It's been about 3 years.
And what kind of energy work do you do? How does it function? What
How does it relate and connect?
Yeah.
For a long time, I didn't know how it went either. I wound up, because you have these things that you do. So a lot of times this came from things that were just within me, period.
Yeah.
I would do the massage, and it had nothing to do with the art. At the time I was married, I just would massage my husband. I was good at it. Or massage different people. I was good at it.
Yeah.
So I went and got trained, and I didn't want to do just regular training. I went and got licensed in myomassology, and which is soft tissue, period.
Yeah.
But the class, I always say, was almost going to like Bruce Lee school, because it was so, we learned a lot about Eastern medicine and just things that traditionally in Western culture are kind of frowned upon.
Yeah.
So like chakras.
There's a lot of touching involved.
Well, yeah, but also needed to know what's going on with the body, not just with your actual physical frame, but the energy that goes along with it, how it works. So I studied Reiki. I did craniosacral therapy, myofascial release, just energy work, period, actual energy work.
Reiki's a little bit different than the other ones, isn't it? Because you don't even have to put your hands on the person.
Exactly.
And I think also you work with the ancient symbols, so visualizing these symbols and almost drawing these symbols upon the person in certain areas of their bodies enables some kind of information. What I know about Reiki, which I think is really helpful in many ways, is that most energy work, it starts at the feet. To generate energy, you have to generate energy in the feet first, and then the energy moves upward and goes up this way. With Reiki, it's the opposite. It enters through here and then it goes downward. So it's very good for people who need to ground themselves. And an example that I'd like to give you of healing arts and the vision of it, or the just a little way to imagine what it's like, is that in Reiki there are different bodies. There's not only the physical body, there's the spiritual body, the mental body, the emotional body, and the physical body. And first, all illnesses begin actually in one of those bodies, not the physical body, either in the mental, spiritual, or emotional bodies, and then in the very end it translates and goes to the physical body. So healing, really healing these aches and pains and imbalances and diseases really would be better to heal what's going on spiritually, emotionally, or mentally, and trying to heal yourself. And I think only you can heal you. You are the only person who can heal you. And sometimes I'm disappointed because people shun this kind of beliefs. They're very, reliant on medicine, especially young people who have things like different kinds of depression, people who are young people who are diagnosed with bipolar or with all those things that are coming
they
out
diagnose
today.
everybody with
Yeah,
bipolar and
absolutely.
ADHD.
And then once you take medicine, it's just extremely difficult to heal, and it's very. I wish that art could penetrate through all of this.
Well, that's my goal. In fact, with all of this, my goal is to eventually become accredited. All of this is kind of like the research period. So this is me proving that it works, as a form of actual therapy. Because like as you said, especially with Reiki, and again I learned about chakras. I even went and did feng shui, just to learn all about the energies.
That's the energy of the space, right, or the house.
Exactly.
Is it only the house or all
just
spaces?
the space around you, period. So wherever you are, because it's important to know how things are affecting us. And a lot of times, I think how it helped with the art aspect when we're getting into those different outlets is being able to tap into what's going on and how do we generate this energy to go through here, because sometimes talking may not work, depending on what's going on or what the blockage is. It may not be the correct outlet. I work with children that have autism or patients that have dementia or Alzheimer's, so they might not, therapy may not work for them, but art might give them a space where they're calm, they're regular, they're normal. You never know they had anything going on with them.
Yeah.
Art is like an action in this sense, I think, because as you said, and I know some other very dominant, prominent healers have spoken about psychology is good because it makes a person feel good because they're talking about it, but it doesn't actually heal.
Right.
The only thing that heals is action. And that's why we have something called rituals. And these rituals, these ancient rituals that people used to do, like ceremonies and rituals, it's because the subconscious doesn't know the difference between an act and reality. So you can, by going on stage, for example, and doing a theater performance, you can actually heal yourself because subconsciously, the subconscious doesn't know that it's not real. And the same with painting. What you're putting on the canvas, the subconscious makes no difference between what is reality, this word reality that we've made up in society, reality, and what is non-reality or the art, and
we see it in the collapse of public health, because a lot of the problems that people are facing are psychosomatic. When we're talking about immune deficiency problems, illnesses such as cancer, such as fibromyalgia, for instance. If you go to medical science and say I have fibromyalgia, they'll say yes you do, and it's in your head, and take this pill, and there's nothing we can do for you. And then they'll take you to a shrink, sorry to say it that way, to articulate aspects that you might not understand.
Exactly.
Right. But when our bodies are faltering, depression, suppression, oppression, repression, these are all active kind of ways of making us sick. And then we're taught that the reason we're sick is our diets, and we're doing traditional diets, less this, more that. But the truth is we're not empathetic, and we don't have systems that carry our energies on the way you're doing.
And I'm glad you said too that use that word, we are not empathetic. Like it really, if people just take the time in medical and Western medicine, just being empathetic and being aware. I had to take nutrition. And I noticed or found out that later on, even in the doctors didn't have to take as much nutrition as I did. And 'cause sometimes diet is definitely a factor, but just the fact that you can give somebody a pill and not know even what they're eating, could be causing what's going on. So,
and then we're in the middle of the opioid crisis. So I just want to give this little factoid to see your reaction to it. And this isn't about the opioids themselves. They actually did a study on Tylenol, and I'm going to relate it back to the opioid crisis. And what they found is a person who just takes a Tylenol a day to kill the pain in their body is actually less empathetic with other people around them, including their families and coworkers. Any kind of painkiller that we take for the body affects our relationship with the earth with the mind, with all of these other bodies that you were talking about.
I've noticed that. I mean,
makes
this is a
sense.
very just personal, from experience, almost silly remark, but I have seen it so much with something called Prozac. When people take Prozac, I find that they become very almost mean because they don't feel that pain anymore. But I don't know what it does to them, and also working with people, with young people who are taking medicines for bipolar or all these, I had an example of a young person, and for some reason she wasn't taking her medicine for I don't know how long, maybe a week or 2 weeks, and you could really make a breakthrough. You could really talk to her. You could really, develop something. And then when she had to go back to the doctor and, oh great, I got my pills, I'm feeling so much better now. It's a wall. You cannot develop something together. It's just all you can do is place things here and place things there and place things there, and I'm coming and I'm going and I have a boyfriend, and that's I don't know. I'm
function. That's what they do. They make people functional in a society that is supposed to function a certain way. And
So how do you deal with the pain that comes out? Because that is physical, no matter what, right?
Well, not just. I mean, a lot of times it's just about inhibitor. Like with the painkillers, all that is an inhibitor.
Yeah.
So it's going to inhibit pain. It's going to inhibit. Like how they say, if it hurts, you're not dead yet. I mean, that's kind of what that does. I mean, even if it's just a Tylenol, you put that in, and it does exactly that with your body, your energy, anything. It puts up an inhibitor, so it literally
that's what
puts you in a space where you can't feel other things.
absolutely.
And so dealing with the pain that comes out from people, it's emotional. Sometimes I cry, but a lot of times now I've gotten used to it. I guess I can't really explain it. I'm happy. I'm happy to help them get through whatever they're getting through, because a lot of times they may not even know what's going on, and that's, again, with energy work, you can be addressing something, maybe traumas that they suppressed from childhood.
Yeah.
And even beyond, even generational
Exactly,
traumas.
exactly. Things that they don't even know what's going on. They feel a certain way, and again, with going to a shrink, how do you address something that you don't know what's going on, or a memory that you don't know, a pain that happened that you dealt with,
Or how do you
thought
even go
you
to a
dealt
shrink
with.
with racism? Like
Exactly.
Like my kid, he passed for the longest time because like he looks Indian like me, and then his father came to pick him up from New York, and then people figured out he's a Blasian kid, and then all of a sudden it's like, why don't you talk to all this other kind of stuff they were doing. And so my thing is, okay, if I took him to a doctor, what are they going to say?
Exactly.
We
Right?
have to do
They gotta
the
fix the
station
work.
ID.
Oh yes.
We are watching WJZZ, Cool TV, the coolest station in the world. We're here on Mediterranean Fire. Joining us today is Calibri, the artist and healer, and Sunanda Samada Corrado, and myself, Biba Sheikh. Please, we'd love to have you call in, comment, subscribe, share, and you can catch us on then YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. And thank you for being here. We're so happy that you're enjoying our shows, and that you're with us today. Especially today is such a exceptional conversation to have this artist and healer with us, trying to put words to these inner movements that she can cause within people through her artwork, that cause their lives to have great changes.
And if you like to support programming like this at one of the few Black-owned stations and platforms for media, please inquire about sponsorships or advertising to WJZZCoolTVOfficial@gmail.com. We need you more than fans. We need you to be the spine of our support, because we're bringing media to you the way it should be.
Thank you.
And we were just talking to Ms. Harris, and she's got her show on every Wednesday at 8 p.m. at WJZZ.
Yes.
Please don't forget to tune in on Ms. Harris's show. And also, both Ms. Harris and Ms. Sheikh are going to be at the Art Summit July 24th at the Annex Gallery. It'll be a far more extended conversation than what started here. Please don't forget these events, and do not forget Backyard Boogie every 2 Sundays, the first and second Sunday. Please come on through and meet your hosts and some wonderful musicians.
It's
All
a
right.
really nice atmosphere. Yeah.
Please come through.
I have a question for you. Detroit has its unique, history and signature and even energy. It's very different from other cities, and the culture of especially the African American culture is a culture within itself. And I'd like to know about what, when you enter a room full of children, for example, in the summertime, whose parents are at work and who are in a space together and who are running all over the place with this amazing energy, and and as soon as they hear any music, they all run and start dancing. I'd like to know how you could do energy work with them. How do you get them to, if it's not painting, for example, if it was something else like storytelling or theater, other than dance and painting, because those I can understand, they would just run to it, But how can you build the bridge for other kind of art forms which are more remote to their culture?
So personally, I think that's where the feng shui kind of comes in, and setting the room, setting the environment, setting the mood. A lot of times we get away from, we think that children just need to be bombarded with color and just stimuli.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they don't. They're people just like us. They're just little grown-ups in training. So when you see how I'm sitting here, if I'm sitting here and this is my tone, you have the teacher kind of wait, like, I'm ready when you are. They'll bring it down to, and we'll do kind of those quiet times. We'll do meditation sometime, just to kind of bring them to a quiet level. I do especially love meditation. I love guided meditation with children because it gives them a chance to focus, but kind of have their imagination go.
Could
so
you
I
do
can,
one with us today, a guided meditation?
Oh, Lord.
Just a little one, so that we know
and
what you're
have you
talking.
talked to the schools about that? Because I know on the East Coast and the West Coast, they're putting meditation in place of detention.
Well, I'd worked with my children's schools for several years, and that's
Yeah.
one of those things because it's so far left. A lot of people aren't receptive to it.
Yeah,
So
it's just
my
too
children,
Right,
my
right.
children, their schools, they love it because they get Miss Harris, so all of this stuff they get, and I usually do it for free.
Yeah.
That's what my organization does. We have these programs in place to be able to do it for free because I didn't feel right charging people for things that they needed.
Yeah.
So this year, actually, their school reached out like, I need you. We have funding this year. Are
Oh
you
my
free for the
God.
summer? I'm like, yeah.
Oh my God. As a side note, I would like to come in because I'm an educational ethnographer.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would just like to watch it and document it and write it down and write up something for you if you don't mind in the future.
I would love that.
Yeah,
I would
more of
love
us
that.
need to more of us need to help each other, and we need to put each other's work out there.
Thank you.
And so I hope I can do that with you.
Thank you. Because people don't know, and they hear about like meditation, voodoo.
They have, and the other part of it also, me having been outside of the country for 30 years and coming back to Detroit, and it's not only Detroit. I think it's the Western. I don't know. It's that sometimes we have more experiences and situations of a more superficial type of yoga and meditation, and people don't really grasp that it's really not about the physical body, that it's about something much more that's going on within, and also that there are some people who have reached something called enlightenment through the process, and that entails a whole other, you know so much about it, Sunanda, because it's your culture that plays a major part in it.
I mean, yoga, like the arts, there's two parts of it. First is like your ego-driven part, right? Because you're learning how to do the skills, you're coping with, am I good enough? Can I show this? Right? But then when you actually get to where you're talking about becoming a conduit for the art, that's when you become egoless. And that's when I really think we start to transcend. It's almost like calligraphy. You start writing it for years and years and years, then all of a sudden it's just in your blood. And once it's in your blood and you're not questioning your skill sets, that's when you start to transcend.
Right.
And I think that's what
And
it
when
is
she
about
says
yoga.
in your blood, she doesn't mean that it's in your red blood. It's, because I know a lot of people are going to be like cringing when you say
No,
that,
it's
because
in,
I know
it's in
from
the
my
blood,
experience.
you know. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think that transcendental aspect is actually forgetting about yourself, forgetting all the labels that people put on you. And that, because I know when I dance, it's like what I don't even realize where the time went when I'm done. I know when you do your art, it could be like 3 hours later. It's like what it, you know. And so it's just for that capacity to escape into the real world. You know, that I find for me is the definition of transcendence. And this is a depiction of it right here.
What's beautiful, I want to get back to the visualization. I don't know, it's
Sure,
up to you
sure.
if you can or can't.
Oh, I don't mind it. I don't mind it. I'm thinking about the time, but maybe towards the end if we do
Yeah,
like
that's
a,
a
I
great
don't
idea.
mind it
Great.
at all.
Yeah.
But what I was thinking about is it's so wonderful that we have this Indian dancer here and this painter and healer here and anthropologist. And I'd like to talk about the difference in these art forms and cultures where, for example, in the Indian dance, I think, you could correct me if I'm wrong, you are, as you said, storytelling with the language of the Kathakali, or I don't know what
There's
branch
several
would you-
languages,
Sorry
yeah.
about that.
That's okay.
and but you're dancing the stories, ancient stories that are in scriptures, and I don't know. Just since we're all here together and kind of talking about these things, isn't it possible for you to just give us like an example of one sentence of the scripture with the kind of movements that illustrate it, just so we can see the dance?
You're getting some meditation.
What?
Okay. Mushika Vahana Modaka Hasta Chamara Karna Vilambita Sutra Vamana Rupa Maheswara Putra Vigna Vinayaka Pade Namaste. His ride is the mouse, is Ganesha, Lord Ganesha. And the reason the mouse is symbolized as his alter ego is because the mouse or the rat can come over any obstacle. So they got rat temples for rats in Kolkata and stuff like that. So, and then he likes to eat sweetmeats. He's got these big ears. He's got this
my God.
elephant tusk. But he's also the one who wrote all of our scriptures for the Mahabharata. Yeah. So when we're talking about the different qualities, and people get polytheism mixed up with monotheism because they're looking at it from a monotheistic perspective. We're looking at forces. We're looking at spiritual, like ancestral worship. We're looking at a whole spiritual plane. And so to call everybody a god isn't the complete depiction of how we relate to all these quote-unquote characters in our mythology, because these are supernatural forces, and when you have stories in your head, you become those stories, right?
And so these stories,
yes.
actually, even the movements, from what I understand, are these dance movements that you were doing now are learned by apprentices in your field of dance, and it's not sign language, but I just want to I want to make sure that the public understands that it's a language. Yeah. So when you said like the ears or whatever, that everybody doing the Indian dance, when they have to say the word ears, right, they make this movement if it's in the scripture, or if I recall like there was some kind of like a buggy, like, or so there's a language for these words. So form and vibration, the vibration of these ancient scriptures, the pronunciation of the words has a certain vibration which we had in the ancient days, which got cut off at one point. That power got cut off, but not in the Indian culture. And so when you do the body
Or the
movement
Kush culture
together with
these
the
African
vibration,
cultures.
it's a relation between the two. And then since we're talking about it, I'm just going to talk about one more little thing, because I really love that the public can just take in some points of view or information, you know, just to understand more of what art can be. This is the upper part of the body that we've just been talking about.
Exactly.
The lower part of the body is all rhythmic, and so I'd like you to with your mouth, if you can, to give us some rhythms from the Indian dance.
Okay, so 3-beat is takite, takite. 5-beat is taka takite, taka takite.
And this is what the feet do. They go into the ground, tapping into the ground. And Indian dance is one of the there's 2 or 3 dances in the whole world that do that. All the other dances are going upward, but Indian dance is going tuck, tuck, tuck into the ground, as I know, because flamenco.
But
it
you know,
also
I
went
just
tuck, tuck.
want to go back to Zora Neale Hurston, right? Because she actually did a lot of the research in African dance. That is the foundation for modern dance today. And so a lot of this research that she did for African dance, I also see extending into what we think is our own Indian dance. But another thing is the transference and inspiration between different mediums of art, right? So like our posing and our temple sculptures, they go hand in hand. And so when I see this body, it's not just a body just sitting around, right? It's in a sculptural pose, which in itself is a meaning.
And when I look at it coming from outside, I really see a Detroit neighborhood. Something about the composure of the person is such a feeling of a Detroit neighborhood to me, having been outside, and I don't know, I can't explain it, but just the look on the face with the kind of openness that's there, and just you can sense what kind of rhythm she would walk in, the glare in the eyes, just that.
It looks like you're waking up.
Beautiful.
It looks like you're waking up. You're about to stretch out from your dream. So could you tell us about because you grew up in Detroit?
Tell
us about that stuff. Tell us about you as a little girl.
I was born here, and I kind of grew up in different places.
Yeah.
So I kind of took all of these tools in the toolbox and brought it back to Detroit. But I lived in San Jose for a good chunk of the first part of my life. We wound up going, and then we moved down south in Alabama.
Wow.
And then we
From
came
San Jose to Alabama.
Yeah. So we went. My mother has family here. My father has family here too, but his roots are in Alabama, in Birmingham. So we wound up we kind of moved back and forth. So we lived in San Jose for a long time. We went to Alabama, and it, number one, having to experience racism all over, because a lot of times people will think that if you live in a better neighborhood, or if you live kind of a more affluent life, that it's different. And no, you are around white people that remind you constantly that you're black, or what you can't do, or so there was always stress. And there weren't a lot of ways for me to be able to express it, because people either just didn't get it, didn't want to get it, they didn't empathize with me. So even as a little kid, I was somehow different than the other little kids, you know.
Did you feel I'm sorry to interrupt, and I'm taking a risk even to talk about this, because we're in the middle of a renaissance and a great movement of justice right now. For the African American community, but how do you see other cultures like mine and Sunanda's being an Arab American and being an Indian American? Because like where I grew up, nobody wanted to sit next to me. I was by myself all the time, and me as a child wishing I was like the others, and all that comes with it, you know. But so how do like
How
your
do I
people
view you?
think, or you?
I always look the same. Like, so, and this is my personal opinion, but I've always kind of taken this growing up. It's like you have everybody that's black, basically, and then white people. But only because I've always seen, like you said, you were stereotyped the same way, or kind of outcasted the same way, you know, just looked at as other, as opposed to you're white and then there's other. And I always thought it was weird, because I looked at there are more people of color period than in the world, you know, than we have white people, you know, at the end of the day. And I looked at it as I was never ashamed, but I guess frustrated, because there was always kind of this attitude of course you're less than. And I always kind of looked at myself like, no, especially with not just African culture, but with Indian, like there's so many cultures that has so much to bring, and I couldn't ever really see what Caucasians had to bring to society. Sorry, this may be very, you know, politically incorrect, but even down to the yoga, like how you kind of take things from other cultures and then water it down, and we're doing this now, and then now we get away from what it was intended to
right,
do.
and you can't say anything to them because they'll say, well, this is how everyone does it in this town, you know. And
Well, and not only that, if you're doing it, because now certain things are cool to do. Now, as time passes on, you know, it's acceptable. But, you know, there was a time where even African dance was frowned upon. Everything is
natural hair
blah.
still frowned upon. Just like 2020 or 2019, they let certain states women wear natural hair.
Yeah.
And that's because of the religious stuff that went through for brown people. Like Sikh people were allowed to wear their turbans. So after they let ethnic people exercise their religious beliefs with hair, they couldn't do that with African Americans anymore. So then, so people thought, like, I'm sorry to put it this way, but people thought that this was a big win for like the black community. But what it was just like a fallout from all the other communities that they had to deal with, because they suppressed, and it's just taken for granted that it's okay to suppress African Americans here, right? Especially with that whole black race thing that started in the 1980s that's still in the back of people's heads, you know? And so it's like this fear, right? And then when kids are always seeing this fear and they're like the most innocent, sweetest thing in the earth, it's like, that's where the pain starts. How
Yeah.
can, you know?
Yeah.
it's energy too. It's, you can feel the energy of a person.
It is the energy.
You know?
I would notice that from a very young age.
And
you
how
know,
would you
aside
feel?
from the direct things, because I remember being 4, and again, we're in California. You think Alabama is racist. You don't think all these other places are racist. We're in California, in the valley at that. And I remember somebody taking my sister's bike at 4 and throwing it down a ravine. Our house would get vandalized. You know, a lot of stuff would happen.
That hurts.
And so that's the direct, but
yeah.
the energy as a little, especially as kids, because children are so in tune.
And
You know,
even
when you come
especially as
in,
adults, because I think kids still, they're so cute and innocent, you know. But then growing up later, you know, I think because I can imagine if I'm walking outside of my door and there are people there who are scared of me and who think I could have a knife and kill them.
But they're not.
I'm going to feel how awful that energy is to put on someone.
Yeah, well, it's confusing, and I think it makes children grow up kind of confused, because
we think
you are who
symbolically.
you are.
We think symbolically.
And
He
it's
didn't throw
weird
that
how
bike
what
out.
other well,
He threw
yeah,
you guys out.
well,
With
it's
the bike.
you either internalize someone else's perception of you,
Yeah.
which a lot of times people do, or you kind of grow up confused, not really knowing who you are, how to accept who you are. So with me, that actually directly affected the type of artwork that I do. That's also why you see a lot of my figures, I do paint them black, or kings or angels. Number one, because people of color aren't usually depicted that way, and I did want specifically children, adults too, but I wanted children to be able to see themselves as something other than what someone else assumes you are. You know, because you're going to get that energy. You're going to get people feeling like you're not a king, you're not a princess, you're not an angel, you're not this, you're a thug, you're a thief, you're a savage, or something that I haven't got a chance to understand. And I just wanted them to see, no, you're beautiful, you're colorful, you're vibrant, you're all of that other stuff, and even showing them how to pull that out of themselves too, so they don't become suppressing to somebody's view of them.
Yeah. And I don't know, I've never spoken to anyone about this, but I'm just going to put this out there just to see what you guys think. Isn't it like in nature also that the physically stronger animals are always more dominant than the small ones, and the smaller animals are always afraid of the bigger, more powerful animals, so they always run away, because they know that if in any you know situation they know they're not going to win. You
I'm
know?
actually thinking about the elephant and the mouse. The opposite
Nice.
sometimes.
Okay.
You know, and kind of Erica Badu's lyrics that we fear the meek and the humble. You know, because when we talk about dominance in a human world, in a moral world, we're talking about oppression, right? We're not talking about getting somebody's baby to eat it per se, but getting people's lives and their life forces and attaching it to you, almost like a body snatching kind of. So it's a very our type of because that's dominance, natural world. But we're talking about oppression,
Becoming
somebody
more
taking your force
consciousness.
and becoming bigger themselves, using your force.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because that's where the force
what's
is going.
happening.
So we need to become more conscious, less to, you know, kind of through energy work get the animal out of our being, to attain a higher level of consciousness, because maybe that is the difference between animals and humans, that we have that thing that we can do that makes us different than animals.
I agree.
Yes,
So,
you are
what-
watching WJZZ Cool TV. Thank you for being with us today. We're on Mediterranean Fire. If you just joined in, we're speaking with Calibri, the artist. Do you call yourself Calibri Harris, or is Calibri your
Calibri
artist
the
name?
artist.
Calibri the artist. And Dr. Sunanda Samador Corrado, an anthropologist and dancer, and myself, Biba Sheikh, performer and activist writer. And we're talking about all kinds of energy work in relation to art and how it can create shifts within people and within society and history from our own experience, especially with Calibri. And she was talking about visualizations earlier, so I just wanted to understand, because there are different kinds of visualizations. And so when you say visualizations, do you mean that people, like, you could take people to, like, they close their eyes and then you take them through some kind of journey that they visualize in their mind's eye, in the third eye?
Yes. We'll do that, and sometimes it doesn't even have to be that deep. And especially with children, a lot of times just guiding people to a thought, because we're in a
Okay.
society now where we don't think. We're kind of always receiving information, and
Absolutely.
there's nothing to shut it down and
We're
have
not
you
allowed
kind
to
of
think, yes.
exactly. So even just kind of guiding to
Oh, wow.
to a thought. All right, what about this? What about here? Just to simmer
What-
it down.
And what about seeing,
Clear the plate.
being able to see for ourselves and not take in the points of view of other people to influence us, without seeing ourselves and making our own assessments on many things in life.
Well, a lot of people don't. So I love the guided meditations, or even just guiding, because number one, you have to be able to clear the slate before you can even focus on you. So number one, being able to bring you to that point, so that later on, especially if you're practicing, or even if you've learned how to do it, even breathe, and you're able to have those moments where you pause and think, what does Habiba feel right now?
I know, but do you think
You know.
a lot of people that have never done it, they can't really believe that such a 5-minute thing is going to make any kind of difference in their life, right? But it does, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
And
It does.
Well, the hardest thing for a person to do really is to spend time by themselves.
Yes, and
pick up
I
the-
thought that was so crazy, because
I
I've
could-
never
I could
had
be in
that
a
problem,
cave.
like
I could
ever.
put me in a cave for
we're
7
normally
years.
Exactly.
we're normally social animals, so this idea that we can repair ourselves from within, that root of the source is there, but you can't tap it without people from without guiding you. And so it's that chain link that I'm interested in. And it's interesting that we're talking about art and how art can elevate people, because from my anthropology days, I know the words art, music, and color are not universal words. My culture doesn't have a word for art. It's not something depicted away from anything else that's beautiful or aesthetic. There were art creators, we could call, that's translated into artists. The word music too. In a lot of African and a lot of Asian languages, there is no word for music. There's words for singing, there's words for playing instruments, but there's no
But do you know-
derived music, or even the word color. So what we're doing is putting our kids on a different stage now, right? Because they can become artists, which is something that nobody thought before, but that was really relegated to a white space, right? And so when these kids are getting to this quote unquote white space, they're going to come into other types of ways that people are going to look at their art, right? Like, oh, that's craft, or
I'm
How do you
glad you
feel about
mentioned
that?
that. Well, I do think that that's actually an outstanding point. I never really even considered that. I mean, really, I think a lot of times we go to capitalism, as a way, and even the fact that I didn't know that there weren't, in other cultures, not words for these things, but maybe that's because it's invented in, for the
For the
sake of
museum.
capital.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. Especially knowing that a lot of these items were taken from other countries and other, you
God
know,
bless you,
and
yes.
if we were making these pieces, because that's what it feels like, you know, even with your dance, this is something that you're doing as a way to either praise or
Yes.
as an outlet to get out whatever's coming
It's not
anyway.
A dance. We don't call it
You're not
dance.
necessarily doing it to look nice, or you're not doing it for anyone else. You're doing it because this is what comes out. And I guess this is just kind of bringing it back to that, like showing people, look, this is, come on, we have another way. We have ways to get out our emotions, to express ourselves. It's not just about making money. It's not just about crafting. It's not, we don't do these things.
Right.
I feel like the arts, I guess now that I know that this is just
Yeah.
this term, is probably more than likely a watered down version of our own tools of expression anyway.
Because I had a friend who went to Parsons from Detroit, and then I had a friend who went to art school Wayne State in Detroit, and they both came up with the same problems with their teachers. Their instructors didn't want them to use their color palette.
Oh my God.
They wanted them so like my one friend was told she's not allowed to use yellow. Like, how do
It's
you grow
very
as an artist
dangerous.
like that?
It's very dangerous. I've also known a lot of. Oh yeah, you answer the
Please
question
go
first.
ahead. Go ahead.
I've also had theater people, older and younger, who have had these kind of experiences where they, when they were younger, they were doing theater, and it was like a healing form, and they did it so well, and they know what it is to have the applause and how it, transforms them, and then so they want to dedicate their lives to it. They want to give everything to it, and they get, for example, to a university, and then suddenly no one's looking at them, no one chooses them at the auditions, and 1 year passes, 2 years, 3, 4, and then they have their parents waiting on the sidelines, and so they have to, then they
A lot
don't
of
know
city
what's
kids
going
with
on, so they
CCS.
change,
I know a lot of people drop out from CCS.
they change majors, and this is very, I wish I could tell them, that you have to switch schools, not majors. You have to find, today we have all that you need to make any shifts within you to strengthen any elements of the artistic process.
But what I'm seeing about our young kids in Detroit, because I teach at the community college level, and I see brilliant kids, but the reason they don't move is because they're taking care of grandma or uncle at home, right? So a lot of working people or also artists don't have that ability to move around because our healthcare system is so
yes, I
defunct.
see what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
so like their trajectories are cut in that sense, right? That to go out there to make the impression. But what I like is you're bringing the world home.
And we're caught off, and I'm glad you brought up about just technique. A lot of times we're trained in technique, and all technique is what someone else who had success doing it is a format for you to copy. This person, Picasso did it this way, so you should do it this way. And instead of, again, digging deep within us, colors all mean something. Movements mean something, emotionally they have different effects. So to say, well, because this person didn't do it, you should not use this, yellow, or not use this, it makes a difference, and it does help the careers. I mean, if I'm following a technique, that's why I didn't go to college for art. I was already an artist. I'd been an artist my entire life, and you don't need to teach me technique. I got technique.
Do you know
but no
that
one would
2%?
teach how to pull it out of you, what's expressing of you. And now artists that are successful, they're successful because of whatever mark they made, something that was different. But
Ironic.
sorry.
2% of people who go to art school finally make art the central part of their life, or are, as they say, professional artists. Only 2%.
I'm not surprised.
I'm not surprised either. And parents also. It's not the same studying medicine or marketing as it is to study art, and sometimes parents don't know, they want the best for their son and daughter, but trying to help their child navigate in the field of art sometimes can have not the right results. It can lead to the wrong place. I've seen it happen, sadly. They don't really know what a singer needs to do with their voice, or what they